let's UV this barrel. So in part 1, we modeled this wooden barrel, and now we have to UV it. So I'm going to go ahead and isolate select, Control 1, so that's the only thing I see inside the view, inside the perspective viewport. And let's open up the UV editor. I'm going to actually use the Maya workspace, UV editing. So first thing I do is I use my own custom UV grid texture to apply to this mesh to see what needs to be UV'd and what kind of stretching it has instead of the Maya version. So if you go to textures, enable checker map, you can take a look. A lot of people use this. You can work with this as fine, but I don't like it. So I am going to create my own material, assign new material, right click hold, go to assign new material. I'm going to use Maya and create a Lambert. And I'm going to click over to the Lambert 3 shader and I'm going to name it UV grid. And I'm going to go to color, click on the checker box, go to file, then go back into attribute editor, image name, click on the little folder icon. And I already have a UV grid texture inside my project directory. So this is the one that I'm going to use. Double click, it now assigns it. I don't see it is because I need to click 6 on the keyboard or click on this little icon right here at the top, textured. All right, so it just shows me using the texture of what needs to be UV'd, what kind of stretching or compression it has. So again, we haven't done anything to our UVs, so it's gonna look pretty bad. Let me go ahead and go back to the UV toolkit. So let's start with the top, and top and the bottom. We'll deal with those at the same time. Let me hit 5 so we can see. So there are two parts, two material types on this wooden barrel. We have the metal strips and we have the wooden barrel itself. So we're going to separate the metal parts as their own UV shells and of course away from the wood. And certain parts of the wood also need to be separate since we won't be able to connect them. So the top and the bottom are going to be one UV shell. These parts right here, all the wood, they're going to be another UV shell. This right here, the cork area, another UV shell, and then all these metal strips, they're going to be metal UV strip shells that we're going to have them all inside UV editor. I'm going to start with the top. Switch over to face component mode, and I'm going to select all of these right here. And also, I want to deal with these at the same time as the bottom. So I'm going to disable the grid temporarily, hold tab, and paint the selection around these. And then I'm going to utilize my selections to grow my selection. So I want to go ahead and grab all of these faces right here up until this point right there. So because this right here is going to be a metal piece. So I want to have a nice wood texture right here that switches over to metal. So I'm going to have to cut that up. But I just need to select those faces. And I want to keep all these faces together. I don't want to have to separate them into different UV shells. And it should be fine. And there should be a very minimal amount of stretching. So I'm going to go to select and grow my selection. So it's going to start grabbing a set of faces and expand out. So I'm going to use the shortcut key Shift period to continue grabbing until I grab all the way up to this. And also the same thing happened at the bottom. And now I'm going to planar project in the UV editor, go to create, planar, go to options and project on Y. And let's move them out. So I've projected the top and the bottom. I'm going to hit 6 or go to shaded mode. Go switch over to UV shell. Let's drag one of these UV shells out because right now I have one that needs to be flipped. So I'm going to select that UV shell, go to modify and flip. Anything in red is inside out and needs to be flipped so it's blue. Let's go back to wireframe. So this way you can see these here. I'm going to hit 6 inside the viewport, the perspective viewport. So this way I can see what else I need to do with this UV shell. And we have some stretching because these faces have been projected top down and they're on top of each other. So easy fix. I'm going to select all the UVs for the top and the bottom. Go to modify, unfold. And just to quickly jump into options, I am going to use unfold 3D with all the default options here. And I'm going to hit apply. So it unfolded all the overlapping faces and actually it looks pretty good. There's some slight distortion going on here, but overall it created a nice single UV shell. And that's what I wanted. So again, a little slight distortion right there, but that should be okay. I should be able to get away with this. And same thing happened on the bottom. So this is perfect. Let's go ahead and just scale these down and move them into the working area right here. Let's deal with the rest of this. I'm gonna hit 5 for shaded mode. Let's go to face, and I'm gonna deal with the wooden faces first. So let's select this face right here, hold shift, double click on the face next to it. So we grab everything across. I'm also gonna do the same thing here, hold shift, left click, and double click on this one. I'm gonna skip this one for now. And I'm gonna continue to select. So these are the wooden parts. And let's go ahead and select everything in here. I'm gonna go into front view and hold shift and select everything in here. And I probably could deselect these, but before I do, I'm gonna just project everything what I have now. So I can use cylindrical. I could go to create and use cylindrical for this. And this will do what it needs to do, and probably very nicely. Actually, let's stick with that. Yeah, that actually creates very nice strips already sliced up for me. Let me hit 6 to take a look at what it's doing to my textures, to my UV grid, and I'm just gonna scale it until everything is like even. All right, that's looking actually very nice. I was gonna do another trick where I project, create a slice across, and then unfold, but actually cylindrical did everything for me already. I don't tend to use cylindrical a lot, but in this case it actually worked out pretty nice. So let me go back to UVs, and maybe just adjust further if I need to, just to kind of scale this in so everything is nice and even. Maybe a little bit more. Here we go. And let me grab those faces right there for the cork, because I want to do those separate. So let me pull these out. And for this, I'm thinking maybe create a cut somewhere and then unwrap it. Maybe it should be 2 shells. And let me see what happens when I just select and unfold. Modify, unfold. And let me scale this into a larger shape. There's some stretching, so yeah, maybe not do that. Let's go ahead and make a cut. So we need to separate this probably into 2 different shelves. So I'm going to double click on this right here. Inside the UV editor, I'm going to hold on shift, right click hold, and go to cut. So now I have a face, a shell for the front and a shell for the sides. So here's one. If I scale that up, that's actually looking pretty good already. So I can just leave that as is. And for the sides, I just need to make another cut. So I'll go to cut and sew and cut. Select all the UVs. And then I'm going to modify and unfold. And let's rotate. By going to transform, I'm going to rotate 90 degrees. And I don't need to straighten this, but if I wanted to, there are options for straighten by going to align and snap, I believe. No, I think it's under unfold, straighten UVs, so I can straighten them. Actually, that looks better, so I'll stick with that. And then let's deal with the strips. So let me bring my grid back. So the metal strips is the only thing that's left inside the UV editor. Let me go ahead and select all the faces. So I don't need to select them inside this viewport, because they are already the only thing that I have left to do. So I'm just going to double check to make sure that that's the only thing, and it is. And let's try cylindrical. It worked out pretty well before. I'm going to go to create cylindrical. So that is pretty good. I will need to unfold. So I just scale them up, and I'm going to just kind of scale them down a little bit so I can see the grid of the lettering better. And let's scale them down. I will need to unfold because right now the faces on the sides right here, if I scale them up, they're stretched out. So I'm going to go ahead, switch over to UVs and go to modify and unfold. And that unfolded the parts right there, but it also distorted my UV shells. So let me try straighten UVs. And it did just that. Straighten all the UVs and they're unfolded. Perfect. Alright, so we have all the UVs done. Let me just take a look at the object. Let me go back to Maya Classic. So everything has been unwrapped. And I just need to make sure I place all these shells inside 0 to 1 space. Create a nice clean UV layout. And the unwrapping process for this wooden barrel will be done. Let's go back into the UV editor, into the workspace. And I can use the layout option, automatic layout in Maya. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like. The layout option will allow me to not worry about my texel density because it will set it for me. So instead of doing it manually through the transform and trying to get and set so all the UV shells match in size, the layout option will do that automatically. So I'm going to select all the UVs that I want to do layout on. Then you go to modify, layout options. I'm going to use unfold 3D. Then I'm going to set my pack-in resolution to whatever pack-in resolution of my texture map size I want. So 2048. Let's start with that. And then I'm going to set my texture map size here in the bottom also to 2048. And then my shell padding, I'm going to create shell padding at 4 pixels. Actually, let's do 8. So that way I have some space between each UV shell. And then tile padding, this is the outside area of 0 to 1 space. I'm going to set this to 4. You always want to give a bit of padding for your tile and your shells. And of course, it should be pixels. And let's hit apply. Give a few seconds and it's going to place everything in here. So it's not very efficient because I do have empty space, but it actually does a pretty good job. Let me double check on my resolutions, my texel density. I just want to double check that it is all the same. So I'm going to click get for one shell, click on this one and click set, click set. So yeah, nothing's changing. That means they're all same texel density. So to make it a little easier, let me switch over to UV shells and just double check that. That way I know which part of the UVs is where. Not that I'm actually going to place anything manually there, but I just want to be able to know myself that each strip of metal is where it needs to be. So I'll actually move this up to the top. So that shell is right there. So that's going to be the second one down. That's the one on the bottom, the second one. This one right here, that is, let me see, I think that's a piece of wood. Yeah, that's the wooden piece. So that should stay here on the bottom. So that's the metal part. That's the metal part. Let me see where this one is at. So that's the one, that's going to be the third one from the bottom. So sometimes I like using the UV layout option from Maya, but then come in here and just position all the shells myself. So that way I have full control. So I'll move these up right there. And then the rest of them is all wood. So let me select this one. So that's the bottom, that's the top. So I'll just rearrange them. This piece right here, actually let me move that one to the top. This one is going to be right there. And this one is going to be right there. And let me just move these down. I'm going to go ahead and utilize some of this space a little bit more. I'll grab all these shells, and this is the wooden parts, and I'll scale them slightly so they just kind of take up the entire space. Let's take this piece right here, and that's the interior of the cork, or the outside of the cork. So actually I'll just position it right there. I'll scale this up a little bit, not too much. And I'll take this one and also scale it up a little bit. Let me take these two. That's the top and the bottom. These I can increase the size a little bit more, just to use up more of this space. And this is the wooden part right there. So let me move this up a little bit. And I just have a little bit of space left here, so might as well use it up. Just raise it up. So I just want to make sure that I just maximize as much as I can. And it's also everything's inside 0 to 1 space, and I still have some padding. And let me just take these and bring them down. Maybe put this one right there. And that shell, let's put it right here. And that is it. Our UVing process is done. So I don't need to collect my UV snapshot because we're going to be texturing this inside Painter. But if you ever needed to do that for one reason or another, you'd go to Image and do UV snapshot. So if you want to bring this into Photoshop to texture it yourself, that's how you could do it. Let me check my UV shells to make sure nothing is flipped. And of course, Layout did a good job of not making sure my UV shells are inside out. So that is it. The UVing process was very simple for this barrel, and we are now done. There is a part for Unreal Engine 4 that if you are going to use static lighting, you may need to create a second additional UV channel. in order to bake light maps onto it. But so far, all we created was a texture in UV channel. So in part 3, we'll take this into Substance Painter and begin texturing.